Hi, this is Paige Stichler, and this is the Just Baked case study. So I'm going to touch upon determining target service levels, and then I'm going to talk about continuous versus periodic review, and then touch upon Just Baked's decline and where they're at today, and then some lessons learned from that. So for target service level, to determine that, you need to first figure out, the cost for understocking and the cost for overstocking. So, in a low-end bakery, you might have lower costs, but you also might have lower margins. And in like a high-end bakery, you might have higher costs to make the product, but then you might have a higher profit. So, these different variables help you determine, are you better off having too much product and having to throw some away, or are you better off having not too much and running short for your sales? So the different formulas will help you determine where your best fit would be. And so for this case study in particular, the cost for understocking for the franchise was $1.50, and the cost for understocking for the company owned was $2.25. So it cost them more for the company owned if they didn't have enough. And that's because they can sell them for more and make a higher profit. So when they lose out on a sale, it costs more. And then the cost for overstocking was 50 cents for each one. That's the cost that, if you have to throw away product at the end of the day, um, there's going to be a cost associated with that. And so then you can determine your target service level. So for the franchise, it said you want to target 75% service level, and for the company owned, you want to target 82% service level. And that a lot of that's driven by, like I said, the company owned, you know, if they have not enough cupcakes, if they're selling it and making a profit of $2, and if the franchise sells one and is making a profit of $1, then if you miss out on a sale, the franchise is going to miss out on that $1, whereas the company is going to miss out on that $2. So they have more to lose by not having enough stocked. So it's a slightly higher service level target for the company owned. So you want to ensure you have product 82% of the time versus 75% of the time for franchise. So for other industries, the target service level can vary. And I didn't necessarily just choose like two different companies, but maybe even two different products at that same business. So the first one I chose was medical. So insulin versus band-aids. Those are both in the medical category. But with insulin, people's life depends on insulin. So that is something that I would think you would want 100% service level. Um, I'm not entirely sure like the shelf life on insulin. I mean, I know at some point it has to be tossed, but I don't think it's a super short shelf life. So that's something you never want to run out of is insulin, because people could die if they can't get access to it. Versus Band-Aids, obviously you want to keep that stocked at your grocery store or CVS, Walgreens. But if if you don't have Band-Aids on the shelf, people can most likely just go to another store to get it, or they'll put it on their next shopping trip. It's usually not an emergency when someone's running out for Band-Aids. They usually are just trying to get them stocked at home. So you would want to have a much higher target service level for insulin versus Band-Aids. Another one is coffee. So, I'm just thinking of Starbucks in particular. They have to stock coffee beans, but they also stock some pastries and croissants and that sort of thing. So, with your coffee beans, that produces, 80% of your products. If you're making any sort of coffee beverage, hot, cold, blended, any sort of thing like that, you're going to need coffee beans as your base. So you would want to ensure that you are stocking those coffee beans almost like 100% service level. Because if you run out of that, then there's countless products that you can't make that day. And usually that's the main reason somebody goes to a coffee shop, is for some sort of coffee product. Now then you have your croissants, and I would think that your service level on that item would be much lower, because it's kind of an added sale that the coffee shop is expecting. If you go in there for a cup of coffee, you might want to purchase a croissant, that sort of thing, but those are usually only good for that day, so you don't want to have too much left over, because you're going to have a lot of waste, and it's also not usually the main reason someone's going there. So if you go to Starbucks and they don't have a croissant, that's probably, it's not going to deter you. You might choose a different pastry. You were probably there for coffee anyway, and the croissant was just kind of an add-on. So you would probably want to have a lower target service level on the croissants. Then grocery stores, they're going to stock, hundreds of different products, but two that I would have a different service level on is toilet paper versus, like Little Debbie snacks. So if someone goes to the grocery store for toilet paper and they're out of toilet paper, you're probably going to go to a different grocery store to get that product, because it's kind of a necessity for people. They may not be down to their last, roll, but they might be, and if they can't get that product there, they are likely to go to another location, so you may lose out on some sales. Um, it's consistent demand, it doesn't have a shelf life, people are always going to need toilet paper, so there's very little risk with having too much stocked. Um, but if you don't have it stocked and you run out, you may lose a lot of sales. Versus, a product like Little Debbie's, it's kind of like an extra perk bonus item that people add on their shopping list, and it's a nice to have. But if you get to that section and they're out of the one you wanted, you're most likely going to just find a substitute product there, but you're probably not going to leave that grocery store and go elsewhere, and it's not life or death sort of item. So I would have a lower a target service level on like a snack item. um, Another one is a donut shop. I know that some local donut shops here in town, they want to run out of product each day, so they don't always have like set hours. They know, they may post that they open at 6 a.m. and then they close when they run out. And maybe some days that's at 2 o'clock, maybe some days it's at 3 o'clock, but their goal is to sell every donut that they have in the storefront, and then once they're out, they close for the day. And if you show up at 2 o'clock and they're closed, you're not really like mad at the business. That's just kind of how they run things. They want to run out and have less waste. So you would actually have a lower target service level at, a local donut shop versus at a chain like Krispy Kreme, Dunkin' Donuts, those sort of donuts shops. They're going to have a higher target service level because they have set hours. They've got to stay open till, 8 o'clock at night or so. And if someone comes in at 7 o'clock, 7:30, they're going to expect donuts to still be on the shelf. They can't just say, sorry, we're out of donuts for the day. Now, they may not have every flavor available, but they're still going to have donuts on the shelf available for purchase. So they're going to need to have a higher target service level, because they got to stay open later. They can't just close when they're out, and people are going to have that expectation that they're there. And then the last one is electronics. I was thinking, if you go to like an AT&T store or Best Buy, something like that, they're gonna have iPads on the shelf, and then they're gonna have accessories like phone chargers, cases, that sort of thing. You would want to have a higher target service level on an iPad, because if you miss out on that sale, they're likely going to go elsewhere, get it online, get it at another store. So you're probably going to lose that sale, because that's a big item that when people decide they want it, they want it. And also it has a high profit margin because it is a higher value item. So you don't want to lose out on that sale. Whereas, a phone charger, you can get those almost anywhere nowadays, even gas stations, grocery stores, electronic stores, that sort of thing, and you're not making as much profit on a smaller item like that. So you still don't want to run out, but it's not as big a deal if you run out of those items versus the bigger ticket items, especially um, because those items are typically not the main reason somebody, if they're going to go to Best Buy, they're probably not going there just to get a charger, because you can get that, almost anywhere. It's a lot of times you're getting other, you're there for a TV or a fridge or whatever, and then you say, oh yeah, I'm going to grab a second charger while I'm here. Um, so you would want a higher target service level on an iPad versus a charger. So then, to stock your inventory, there's two different methods that you can choose. There's the periodic review policy, which is what they did with the cake mix, and then there's the continuous review policy, which is what they did for the eggs. So for periodic review, you're checking at fixed intervals, so you can set that at daily, weekly, monthly, etc. But if it's weekly, maybe it's every Monday you're checking your stock and seeing what you have, and then you're ordering like a certain amount based on your forecast. So, this Monday you may check and you see you have 5 pallets of cake mix left. So maybe you're ordering whatever amount to make that your target level. But then the following Monday, when it's time to check again, you may have 3 pallets of cake mix left because maybe your demand was higher that week, or you use more, or whatever. So now you're ordering a different amount. So you're still ordering on that fixed day every Monday, but the amount that you're ordering may change based on how much you used or what you're predicting you need next. So for the cake mix, the review and lead time is 7 and 3 days. So your total exposure period is 10 days. So when you place your order, you need to make sure you're covered for those 10 days. And based on, your cost if you run out, so you have to go to grocery stores and pick up more, and the cost associated with that. That's how we determined that you would want a 0.996 service level for cake mix. That cake mix makes every cupcake you're selling. So if you run out of cake mix, you literally cannot make cupcakes that day. So that's why that service level is so high, because without that item, your product is useless. And then based on the probability, it's at 5 pallets where you get to 0.997. So that's when you're finally at what your target was. So your target pallet quantity is 5. So if it's Monday and you check your stock and you have 2 pallets, you need to order 3 because you want to be back up to your 5. So that's periodic review. And then for continuous review, that's, you're continuously checking your stock, seeing how much you have, and when you get down to a certain point, then you order more. So if your target service level, if your target pallet is 5, and when you get down to 3, it's just automatically going to order it. Well, that may be, maybe Monday and you're down to 3, so you order more, and then Thursday comes along and you're down to 3 again, so you order more, and then maybe it's not until the following Wednesday that you're down to 3 again and you order more. So the time in between ordering fluctuates, but you're always getting down to a certain reorder point, and then you're ordering a fixed quantity to get back up to where you want to be at. So for the eggs, it's saying that when you get down to 2,800 is when you would want to place your order, and you would want to have, it's 1.75 days of supply. Okay. So, additionally, on periodic versus continuous, periodic, it's easier to implement usually. There's usually less monitoring and bookkeeping, but for a weekly or monthly check, if you're checking weekly and you have really high sales that week, you're not checking until that following week, and you may run out of product in that time. Or if you may be ordering too much, so you have a higher chance of having the wrong amount of inventory, but it's usually easier to implement. And then with continuous, you can reduce the risk of stockouts, because every time you get down to, if you say 3 pallets is your reorder point, every time you get down to 3, whether it's one day later, 1 week later, a month later, when you get down to that, it's ordering more. So it kind of prevents you from running out as long as you're accounting for your lead time to get more fulfilled. Um, and then so that helps optimize your inventory costs, but then it can be harder to track because if you're having to track, if you have 100 products and you're like, when you get down to this amount on these, you need to order more. That means you have to have some inventory system that is always telling you how much you have, so that when you get down to that amount, it orders more. So some industries or businesses that would use periodic would be like low demand, low value, or perishable goods where they're more stable. And so like a furniture store or a used car lot, um, that's easier to track. You can go out there and count how many couches, like once a week. You count how many couches you have. You have five. Now a week later, you may have three. It's not going to change a whole lot every day. You're not going to be constantly counting or anything. So, with a couch, furniture, mattress, those are lower volume sales. It's easier to do on periodic. And with continuous, that's more high volume products. So, like your Amazon and your Walmart, they're always knowing how much inventory they have of all their products, and it just says when milk, when you at Walmart, when you get down to X amount, order X amount more. So it's continuously checking and ordering more. And so, the downfall for Just Baked, and so, part of their history is, they opened their first store in 2008 in Michigan. And, a year later, they had just 10 employees and 500,000 in revenue. 3 years later, they had already grown to 70 employees and 3 million in revenue, and were now in Ohio and Michigan. And then in 2013, so a year later, they were nominated as in the top 1,000 fastest growing companies. And at this point, they were up to 17 stores, company owned and franchise. And, some of them even served ice cream. So they were just kind of expanding and changing things quickly. And just 2 years later, they ended up closing all 10 corporate locations. Four of the franchise locations remained open, but it went, things went good for a while. Then they just expanded so fast, so quickly, that just a couple years later, they had to shut all their stores. And so I think, some lessons learned and some key takeaways is that, for your supply chain, if you've based your whole business around a certain motto or whatever, like their thing was, they have fresh cupcakes. As you expand, can you continue supplying fresh cupcakes to all your locations? As they open in Michigan and then Ohio, they were still baking all their cupcakes in Michigan and then distributing them to all the stores. So as you're expanding, can your factory or your warehouse where you're producing the cupcakes, can that keep up with all the other stores? Or do you need, for every 5 stores, you need a facility that's producing the cupcakes? So then if you now have 10 stores, now you need 2 places, that sort of thing to consider. And then, with demand, gourmet cupcakes were popular for a while because of social media and TV shows, but will that trend continue? There's certain products that there will always be demand for, it'll always be around, it's stable, it's consistent, but with something like gourmet cupcakes, that can be, a fad for a while and then it can go away. So, what can you do to ensure that you keep people's interest in the product? Um, because especially, as the economy goes up and down, people aren't always going to be able to splurge on things like gourmet cupcakes. So, and then how do you keep their interest for it? Which is kind of what Crumble Cookies does. They have a new menu every week. It keeps people engaged and interested, and it's always changing. So they do well there, keeping the demand. And then lastly is just with growth, as businesses do expand, some people feel like it's less and less the same as the original one that they all fell in love with. And so if that's if your main store that opened is what everyone loved, they love to go there, they love the product, and you start, cranking out all these other shops left and right, I feel like people are gonna not get the same experience that they did with the original one, and they may not have the same love for it. So, how do you replicate what you were doing at the original one and ensure that it follows through to the rest? So, with that, that's all I have. Thank you.